complete environmental chaos. That's what former Vice President Al Gore predicted back in his movie in 2006. It didn't happen. There he said back in 2009, 75% chance Arctic ice gone within the next 7 years. 8 years later, Arctic's still here.
Hundreds of world leaders and climate change experts are descending on Copenhagen to try to come up with a new pact to slow global warming. And thousands of protesters across Europe today were trying to send them a message. It's time to stop talking and make a deal. But reaching that deal has now been complicated by what's being called ClimateGate, a string of hacked private emails between global climate change scientists in the U.S. and Europe, which have cast doubts on the very science this summit is based on. The emails seem to show that some of the world's top experts decided to exclude or manipulate some research that didn't help prove global warming exists. 1998 was the hottest year since record-keeping began, but the temperature went down the next year, and it's only spiked a couple of times since. An email from 1999 shows scientists worked hard to demonstrate an upward trend. They talk of using a trick to hide the decline in global temperatures. It worked like this. When temperature readings gathered from studying tree rings showed what looked like a decline in temperatures from the 1980s to the present, the scientists added in measurements taken later by more modern instruments, which gave them the answer they wanted. The scientists say the emails are being misinterpreted.
A lot of charges have been made that I think are quite unjustified, cherry-picking information and not of taking it quite out of context and misrepresenting what it's actually saying.
Senator James Inhofe, a climate change skeptic, says the emails prove the global warming threat is exaggerated. He wants a congressional investigation.
We're relying upon that science for a bunch of stuff that we would be doing that would lose a lot of jobs and really affect Americans. I do believe that an investigation would show that they have clearly manipulated the data.
The scientists behind this new study say it indicates the average temperature of planet Earth will increase by 3 to 8 degrees by the year 2100. That's 87 years from now. A 3-degree increase would be a pretty big deal, and an 8-degree warm-up would be the stuff of real climate crisis. By the year 2100, we will be beyond anything human society has ever experienced. That's a quote by the study leader, Sean Marcotte, a postdoctoral researcher at Oregon State University's College of Earth, Ocean, and Atmospheric Science. An 8-degree warm-up. It would melt the polar ice caps. It would flood the coastlines. It would turn the U.S. Farm Belt into a desert. So how did these scientists come up with their projections? Well, they calculated the temperature of Earth over the last 2,000 years and produced this chart. It shows a rather steady temperature for all but the last 300 years or so, and then the temperatures skyrocket upward. Now, before you get too excited, please note the numbers on the left side of your TV screen. This is the temperature anomalies from so-called normal, and it's done in tenths of a degree. So that huge warm-up we see on the chart, it's actually less than 1 degree anomaly. So if they are correct, so far the warming is not alarming at all. Well, where did they get the data for this chart? Well, they used just 73 sites to cover the entire globe, the land, and the oceans. Their temperatures were projections from ice cores of Greenland, stalagmites in Borneo, and fossilized pollen in Scandinavia. Some of the data comes from the shells of long-dead aquatic microbes, buried as many as 50 feet or more below the ocean floor. From the chemical makeup of the shells, the scientists got clues about the water temperature at the time those creatures existed. This is new and unconfirmed by other researchers. Now, look at this map of global temperature anomalies for January of this year. The brown to the red areas are warmer than normal, and the blue to green areas are cooler than normal. You can see how radically varied the temperatures are from region to region. There's nothing uniform or constant about weather and climate. They are constantly changing. And allow me to be a bit skeptical, too, of using a brand new system of examining the fossilized shells of tiny sea creatures to calculate the temperature 1,000 years ago within an accuracy of 1/10 of a degree. Allow me to show you two other charts. This one is the monthly temperature deviations from normal month by month for Alaska in 2012. 10 out of the 12 months were colder than average. The winter months were much colder than average. And how about this chart? It shows that for the winter now ending, the extent of sea ice around the North Pole is more or less average for the last 20 years. The sea ice is not all melting. And oh yes, allow me to add, the polar bear population is either stable or actually increasing, and this new study was funded by our tax dollars from the National Science Foundation. It spends at least $2 billion a year on environmental research projects and only supports studies that further the global warming scare. It seems to be on the political and environmental mission. And there's nothing in this study that directly connects the carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere by our burning of fossil fuels with the increase in temperatures. It's merely assumed. There is no question that the amounts of CO2 in the atmosphere continue to increase, but it remains only a trace gas, 1/2 of 1/10% of the atmosphere. And there's nothing in this new study to support the theory that CO2 is a pollutant and a threat to the future of Earth. So my bottom line remains pretty skeptical. This new study is not convincing scientifically. My frustration is that the national media never seems to question the global warming scare.
I do believe that the issue of global warming has been politicized. I think that there are a substantial number of scientists who have manipulated data so that they will have dollars rolling into their projects, and I think we're seeing it almost weekly or even daily. Scientists who are coming forward and questioning the original idea that man-made global warming is what is causing the climate to change. Yes, our climate's changed. They've been changing for ever since the Earth was formed. But I do not buy into that a group of scientists who have, in some cases, found to be manipulating this information. And the cost to the country and to the world of implementing these anti-carbon programs is in the billions, if not trillions of dollars at the end of the day. And I don't think, from my perspective, that I want America to be engaged in spending that much money on still a scientific theory that has not been proven, and from my perspective is more and more being put
Now the amazing thing about the human conscience is this, that even if you don't believe what I'm saying, you believe what I'm saying. But even if you reject the truth of what I'm saying, there is rooted inside you a conviction which you can suppress with the years, but which is there nonetheless, which is telling you that these things are so.